Since we are reading from Let's Get Writing this week on and introducing our new writing mode, which is going to be cause and effect, we only have one video lecture this week, and that is for our grammar. And this week we're focusing on phrases and what exactly that means and the different types that are there. So let's go ahead and take a peek at that. So what are phrases? When one word, adjectives, and adverbs cannot convey all of the details and relationships that a writer needs to express, the writer can use a phrase to express the precise idea. And so a phrase is a group of words that functions in a sentence as a part of speech. So think of it this way. We've talked about previously in the semester the different parts of speech in the English language. And we've talked about, for example, nouns, like cat is a noun. And so a phrase is where multiple words are functioning as one part of speech. We're going to look at about 5 phrases today, but the first that we're going to look at are prepositional phrases and appositive phrases. Prepositional phrases contain a preposition and a noun or pronoun called the object of the preposition. And that object, that noun or pronoun, may have modifiers itself. So for example, here's a sample from a sentence: on the limestone floor. On is our preposition, right? And if you look at let's go to our modules. If you look at, and I recommend you printing this out for you. If you look at our materials, I know it's getting kind of long now, our course materials, I've actually included under our supplements a list of prepositions, and that can be really helpful to just kind of familiarize yourself with them. Because unlike nouns, which are massive, right? There's more nouns than any other part of speech in the English language. Prepositions are set. There's only this list of about 30 words, and they're never going to change. And so it's easy to kind of familiarize yourself with them, and they will always be prepositions. Anyway, back to our discussion. So on is a preposition, and everything following it until you hit a verb or the end or piece of punctuation is part of this prepositional phrase. So on the ancient limestone floor, what is on what? Floor, right? That is the object of the preposition. And as we notice, limestone is actually, the ancient limestone is also part of the phrase because it's modifying what type of floor, right? It's telling us the type of floor. These prepositional phrases can function either as adjectives or adverbs. An adjective phrase is a prepositional phrase that modifies a noun or a pronoun by stating what kind or which one. Adjective phrases can modify any sentence part that is acting as a noun. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the subject, right? We have other nouns can appear at other parts in the sentence and still be nouns. So let's look at this example. An etching of a cave bear was found. Etching is our subject. Following behind it is the prepositional phrase, and then was found is the verb. This is answering the question, what type of etching is it? That of a cave bear. And I always recommend when we're doing these and finding these, and I may have mentioned this before, that it can be very tricky sometimes because we often associate the simple subject being right next to the simple verb. And in this case, it's not, right? This prepositional phrase is, this adjective phrase, which is a type of prepositional phrase, is in between that. And it could be very easy to say that bear is the subject when it's not, right? It's the etching that was found. A bear was not found. It's an etching of a bear. Let's look at another one. I have a fear of the dark. It answers the question, what kind of fear is it? It's a fear of the dark. I sent my friend in Iowa a picture. What type of friend is it? That's the friend that's in Iowa. And if we look at it here, in this case, this noun is functioning as an indirect object, right? This noun of friend, because I is the subject, Sent, what did I send? Picture. What type of, to or what was the picture sent? Friend, right? The direct object's picture, indirect is friend. When it's an adverb phrase, like adverbs, an adverb phrase modifies verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs, but instead, it's not just one word, it's multiple words beginning with a preposition, right? An adverb phrase is a type of prepositional phrase that modifies a verb, an adjective, or an adverb by pointing out where, when, in what way, or to what extent. When it let's look at this example of it modifying a verb. In Mammoth Cave National Park, you can tour the caves. It answers the question, can tour where, right? Can tour is our verb. Where can I do it? In Mammoth Cave National Park. When modifying a verb, an adverb phrase can come before or after the verb being modified. When it modifies an adjective, I am angry beyond belief. It says, to what extent am I angry, right? How angry am I? Beyond belief. Modifying an adverb example, the shovel bit well into the earth. It answers, well, where? Where was the well? Into the earth, right? Shovel is our subject. What is it doing? Bit, simple verb. Well is an adverb describing bit, and into the earth is modifying well. So it's an adverb modifying an adverb. As we talked about with adjective phrases, more than one adverb phrase can modify the same word. Before breakfast, the smell of bacon drifted into our campsite. Both of these are modifying, because drifted when? Before breakfast. Where? Into our campsite. Both of these are modifying drifted. Another type of phrase is the appositive phrase. And to oppose means to not oppose as in like battle or be against, but oppose, which means to place near or next to. Appositives and appositive phrases are words placed next to nouns and pronouns to provide additional information. This is a fancy word for something we use all the time. It's when you name something and then immediately rename it or re-clarify it to give further information. That's using an appositive. So for example, it is a noun or pronoun placed next to another noun or pronoun in order to identify, rename, or explain it. So for example, my dog, comma, a chihuahua, comma, stood outside the cave. Chihuahua, is that a positive? It is a noun, and right here it's being used to describe further the subject, right? My dog. What type of dog is my dog? It's a chihuahua. As I pointed out, this example shows an appositive that's set apart by commas. Dashes and colons can also be used to set off appositives. There really is no rule about which to use. It's whichever you feel is best conveying your meaning, what type of punctuation. There is no necessarily right or wrong when it comes to using commas or using dashes. Commas are the default, but sometimes, especially if I'm wanting to give that emphasis, I'll use a dash. This type of punctuation, these, like, think of it as like parentheses right around it, like setting it apart. Those commas are used to set off an appositive only when the appositive contains non-essential material. That is, that material that can be removed from the sentence without altering its meaning. If the meaning is essential, no commas are used. So for instance, think of these commas around it as these sort of like handles that you can lift it up. So if I lift out Chihuahua with the commas and I just say my dog stood silently outside the cave, my sentence is still making sense, right? I haven't altered the meaning of the sentence. I'm just clarifying what kind of dog my dog is. Let's look at an example where it's essential. My brother Jason enjoyed the tour of the French Quarter. Here, these two are kind of linked. I'm naming my brother, even though we could put commas in here. In this case, I think it's pretty, like, especially if I have multiple siblings, it's important and essential to classify that it's Jason I'm not talking about and not Claudia, whomever. When an appositive is accompanied by more than by one or more modifiers, it then becomes a positive phrase. So it's the same as in a positive, except there's more words to it, right? For example, the explorer, a daring scientist. So that's describing the explorer. We see it's not essential because it's set off by commas. But what's making it a phrase is that we've got daring here, right? That's describing the scientist. Brave the dark recesses of the cave. I don't know why I have cave. Verbal and verbal phrases. A verbal is a word derived from a verb, but used as a noun. So all of these types of phrases I'm now going to cover, the previous ones were functioning as, we're sitting there modifying nouns. These are now going to, are derived from verbs, but are used as a noun, an adjective, or an adverb. Like verbs, verbals may be modified by adverbs and adverb phrases or have complements. A verbal phrase with modifiers or complement is called a verbal phrase. We're going to look at three types: participle and participial phrases, gerunds and gerund phrases, and infinitives and infinitive phrases. And all of these are doing the same function. They're just different types of verbs, which we'll see. Participle and participial phrases. Many adjectives are actually verbals known as participles. A participle is a verb that can act as an adjective. For example, a devastating fire swept through the apartment block. Devastating can be a verb, right? Like my breakup was devastating. Here, though, devastating is describing fire. It's a verb functioning as an adjective. And they can come in three forms, and it's really just, for terms of these participles, it's the ending. If it ends in ing, it's present. The burning embers fell to the ground. Past usually ends in ed, but remember, English is a unique language that has a lot of multiple influences from different language groups. So we have those irregular endings sometimes, like T or EN, like broken. The scorched forest eventually regrew. Scorched can function as a verb, but here it's a verb function as an adjective describing forest. And then the perfect participle, which is really just adding having been or having to the past. Participles come before or after the words they modify and answer the question, which one or what kind, aka adjectives, right? Their verbs function as adjectives. Verbs have a subject, and however, verbs, unlike adjectives, have a subject and express an action. So let's look at the same word used as a verb and then used as a participle. As a verb, the firefighters respected their chief. Here, we have the subject, right? Firefighters are doing something. What are they doing? They're respecting. We have an object. What are they respecting? The chief. As a participle, respected is the same word, but here the respected chief had the firefighter support. That's not the action. It is an adjective describing the chief, right? What is the chief like? He's respected. Participial phrases, again, all the difference between participle, participial, prepositional phrases are just the length. They all do the same function. So a participial phrase has modifiers and complements to extend it and make it longer. So it's a participle modified by an adverb or adverb phrase or accompanied by a complement. The entire phrase functions as an adjective. So here, with an adverb modifying it, burning brightly, the fire lit up the room. Example with an adverb phrase, the bone broken in two places, healed slowly, right? This is describing bone. The full thing is broken in two places because we've got the participle and then the the prepositional phrase behind it, all working together to describe bone. And then we have the verb healed. How did it heal? Slowly. And with a direct object, holding the high pressure hose, I struggled to stand still. A comma usually sets off a participle phrase when it's at the beginning of the sentence. Think of it like as an introduction, as we see here. Within the sentence, however, a participle phrase is set up by commas only if it is non-essential to the sentence. So very similar to appositives, right? Which we're functioning as modifying nouns. So let's see it here. Mr. Sharp driving the fire engine is well trained. While it definitely makes the sentence better, I can use these commas to lift it out and still have meaning that Mr. Sharp is well trained, right? Example of an essential, the man driving that fire engine is well trained. Here it's sitting there. We have to know specifically which man, right? We'd lose meaning. We don't know the man. Mr. Sharp is very specific. We know who Mr. Sharp is. Here we have to know it's the man that is driving the fire engine. So it's essential. Gerunds and gerund phrases. When we looked at participles, they were very particular types of verbs. Here, gerunds and gerund phrases are verbs ending in ing that function as nouns. Think of running, like she went running. Running is a noun, right? It's an action, or swimming. One can swim, but also swimming itself is its own noun, its own thing. So examples, firefighting is often dangerous. He gives studying all of his attention, right? Give is the verb. Studying here is a noun, right? To avoid confusing verbs, participles, and gerund, which can all end in ing, just check the word's uses in the sentence. How is it functioning? So here as a verb phrase, my friends are fighting the fire. Here it's the action, right? Are fighting, that's what they're doing. As a participle, a fighting spirit permeated the fire station. Here it's an adjective. In examples of gerund, it's functioning as a noun, right? Firefighting, this thing tires me out. Again, a gerund phrase, therefore, is just a gerund now longer with modifiers or complement, all functioning together as a noun. His loud, persistent snoring disrupted the entire house. Battling arson grows more expensive each year. This whole act of battling arson is our subject, right? It is what's growing more expensive. And finally, infinitives and infinitive phrases. An infinitive is a form of a verb that generally appears with the word to and also acts as a noun, an adjective, or an adverb. I like to debate. Here it's a noun, right? The action of debating. You can say debating, make it a gerund to say debating, and it still has the same function. Do not mistake prepositional phrases for infinitives, right? Because to is a preposition. In an infinitive, a verb follows the word to. In a prepositional phrase beginning with the word to, a noun or a pronoun is going to follow the word to as the object of the preposition. And an infinitive phrase is an infinitive, just now with modifiers or a complement or a subject, all acting together to as a single part of speech. So examples, to play with matches is wrong. I was about to speak. The fire department's intention to save the house intensified quickly, and fires are hard to contain. This week's grammar exercises are a little more diverse. I wanted to cover in small ways all of these parts of speech. So some of them, or not, excuse me, all these types of phrases, not parts of speech, excuse me. And so some of them pay very close attention to the directions, because some of them may be only 3 or 4 questions relating, and then the directions change. If you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to me. Have a great week, guys.